What's up? Matt from Urchfab. I'm losing my voice a bit, so I'm trying to keep the speaking to a minimum on this one, but I'm just carrying on with the Mk2 Escort. I've got only jobs left to do before I can drive it are to put some gearbox oil in it, diff oil in it, move the outlet on the radiator over a little bit, and I'm going to change the bottom outlet as well because it's kind of pointing down and it needs to point up. I'm just going to make them all the same size so that the water pump outlet and all the outlets are the same size, so that it just make it easier for finding hoses to plumb everything up. And then once I've got that done, put some coolant in it, and then I can run it up to temperature and drive it out the road, see what it goes like. test flight with the GoPro. Ta-da! Can't believe it finally drives. Seems to go pretty well. It's hard to tell, obviously, with the amount of driving I've done in it. I've only just, I need to take it somewhere where I can actually open it up and do a bit of a shakedown on it and just make sure everything's right on it. But there's not really much going on now. It's coming up to winter. There's not really many events I can take it to at the minute. If anyone's got a spare airfield or massive yard, they don't mind me burning around in the southwest, drop me an email. But a couple of issues already. Water pump's leaking. I've got a spare one, so I'll have to swap that over. There's this funny squeak noise, which is sounds like a little mouse in the inlet manifold, which I thought initially was a vacuum leak. And Kieran's got a smoke testing machine, so we put the smoke tester on it, and there was a leak on the throttle body, so resealed all that. Had to make a little brass bush for the the rod that the throttle plate sits on. It was leaking through that. Did all that thinking that was going to be what the problem was. Put it all back together, retested it with the smoke machine, no leaks. Started it up, still squeaking. Just going to try and answer a few questions that I get all the same questions about this car. First question's, why put a Saab engine in it? Why haven't I put a YB Cosworth in it? That's I would imagine that would be an obvious answer to that, but a YB Cosworth engine probably cost me about 10 grand to get done running for a decent one in that car. Whereas that whole engine setup, including everything to do it, gearbox, is under £1,000 that's cost me to do everything. So that's why I use them. They are a really good engine anyway, but but there's obviously engines I'd rather have in it. I would rather have a YB Cosworth engine in it. My old Escort had a C20 LET engine, Vauxhall engine. That's one of my favourite engines. If I had a load of money, I would have it naturally aspirated, some throttle bodies, but if you want decent power out of like a C20 XE engine on throttle bodies, again, you're looking at like mega money. This is just budget. This whole build is just budget build. So that's why I like the Saab engines. They're super cheap and you can make insane power out of them. If I was to put a decent turbo on that, it would make 400 horsepower all day long, but it would just destroy the drivetrain on the back. The half shafts and everything would just be snapping all the time if I had that sort of power going through it. So I would say at the minute that feels like it's about 250. If I was to guess, that turbo is kind of knackered. So I would like to get it somewhere between 250 and 300. It's a good number for one of these. But they make loads of torque and they sound good. Another main question is what gearbox I'm using. It's an Amiga V6 gearbox. The number on it is R25-28. And they came out of all the Amiga manual V6s. And one thing I do have to say about the old Saab conversions is when it comes to the conversion itself, it's a really difficult one. Like to get that in there, I've had to make custom sump, custom inlet manifold, custom water rail, do some work to the head at the back, blank off some of the waterways at the back of the head, relocate the oil filter because it hit the steering rack, just loads of stuff. I had to make a bigger tunnel, notch the bulkhead, the list goes on. The props are a pain in the ass if you use that gearbox because it doesn't have a slip joint on the back of the gearbox, so you need a prop with a slip joint in the prop, because if you have a live axle you need to have a prop shaft that has a slip joint in it. It's a lot of work to get one of those in there, whereas like there's a lot of other engines. Anything that's already set up rear wheel drive is going to go in a lot easier. One of the easiest conversions for an Escort for something turbocharged, it's not crazy money, is the Nissan SR engine. One of those will just drop straight in. But the only thing I'd put one of those engines in would be the skip. No, only joking. They're not that bad. Well, they are pretty bad. The Z-Tech engines, obviously you can just buy all the bits off the shelf to put one of them in. If you were going to pay someone to do all the work, then that definitely wouldn't be a cheap conversion at all. Can anyone spot something that isn't going to fit anymore? So, I didn't think of that one. That's a hideous looking oil filler cap anyway, so I think I'll get rid of that, maybe like weld one onto the front casing here or something. But yeah, so yeah, looking forward to just getting out on track now and giving it some abuse. That's going to be it for this one. Just watching. See you on the next one.